You're listening to Raising Anchor, a Rhode Island FC podcast. We're glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, and joining me on today's episode is the very first employee hired by RIFC, Stadium General Manager Paul Byrne. Paul, how's it going?
It's going great. Excited to be here.
Hey, thanks for setting up the time to be able to talk to you. There is a lot of questions, I think, that have been growing and building over the last couple of months as we get closer and closer. We're now, 5 days away, I think, as of this recording.
About that, I lost count.
So yeah, it's too close now to where it's dangerous, right? So having said that, listeners have been really excited to start showing up. Of course, we had the soft launch with that last friendly against Providence College last week. And so we're hoping today that we can just sit down and have a really robust discussion about who you are and what fans can expect as we get ready for that first game against New Mexico United this Saturday on the 16th. So you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
I promise it'll be as painless as possible. First and foremost, it was really fascinating that when doing the research on you as the first employee hired by the club, the first thing you do is what's the pedigree check? What's that background? And I had no idea, at least until we had some earlier conversations last year, that your soccer pedigree goes way back. I mean, you have been embedded in the sport for such a long time. So first, how did you get involved in the sport of soccer?
Yeah, no, and thank you for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to telling you a little bit about me and everything to do with RIFC. I've been a soccer fan my whole life. Both of my folks are from Ireland, so I'm first generation Irish. My father's a big Manchester United fan, so obviously grew up with a kit of Man United. So I've always loved soccer. Played it. Was big U.S. soccer fan, so on and so forth. So always wanted to be involved on some level. So I went to school. I tried to get a sports management degree. I kind of went through a couple different schools, honestly, and landed an internship with the Metro Stars. So I told them I would do anything possible. Just put me anywhere. I don't care what it is. And they put me in the operations department. And I met a gentleman by the name of John Dugan, who was a very influential person, mentor. Unfortunately passed away recently, but I want to mention him because he was definitely influential in my overall career. So yeah, I really was a perfect example of a kid that just wanted to be in soccer really badly, would do anything possible to get there. So the Metro Stars in 1999 hired me as an intern, and I essentially just worked my way up. I was the go-to guy. I was pretty much in the operations world. At times, it's very easy to say no. I always said yes and figured out a way to make things happen. So, in the early days in MLS in '99, essentially the league was very young. I started in '96, just after the '94 World Cup, and similar to USL, I see a lot of similarities now. There was limited resources, so you were able to experience many different parts of of the company. Whether I was the mascot, Metro the dog, one time at a girls' gymnastics birthday party. I got to experience that. I'll never do that again. I would go to community events. I would assist in marketing side. I would engage with a lot of sponsorship servicing. So I'd also be involved in all the broadcasts. I'd be involved in helping with the ticket sales department on group sales. So there was the ability to be able to be well-rounded. And really be able to learn kind of what my niche was in the sports world. But it always came back to operations for me. I was a guy that got it. I talk about that often when I speak to students about operations and what it means. You really just have to get it. And when people understand what you mean, I see you nodding your head, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I kind of understand what that means. And some people don't get it, and they'll do what they do. They'll go and maybe they'll sell tickets, or they'll move on to another role. So I was fortunate through the years to just continue to get it and be the go-to guy, and I ended up being the director of operations for the Metro Stars. And then crazy thing happened: the Red Bulls came in and took over. So can we touch on that, because
that is the most interesting thing. I feel like you have an unofficial title as like the quote unquote king of rebranding. I looked through that journey of your soccer career, and first it was the Metro Stars converting to the then Red Bulls. Then you took over the helm of the San Jose Earthquakes, moving to become the Houston Dynamo. And then even later in a non-soccer world, you ended up with a football club in the NFL that went from the then Redskins to the now Commanders. Is that something that you have been like? Did you, when you look back at your career?
You know what? I never. No, I mean, this isn't something. It just sort of, I guess, so happened. I mean, Earthquake's a little different. I was in Dynamo, or I joined Dynamo a little bit further on to when they were just actually the Dynamo from the Earthquakes. But no, it's an interesting stat. I never realized that until you mentioned it. But I guess that's that's the way it's sort of played out in my career, and I'm used to it. I have a lot of experience, obviously, with rebrands now. So especially with the Washington Days going through 3 different names. So, but no, listen, Metro Stars was great. Another big part of my job is I would interface with the team. I would be in sort of the inner workings of team dynamic, right? So working with the likes of Bob Bradley, who's an incredible coach and a mentor, a friend of mine, Bruce Arena, Mo Johnston, so many different coaches that I've now have become friends, and then people, idols that I would look up to, John Harkes, Tony Miola, Yuri Jarkef, all of these players that were then back in MLS with Metro Stars became kind of, peers. So it's kind of a cool experience to be around a lot of that. That was like the early on days of when Beckham was, relatively young in his career, and we would do international games with, I remember England, Colombia, I think it was, and a few others at Giant Stadium. So it was a lot of fun. So Red Bull took over. And everything pretty much changed at that point, right? So anytime that you have a new company, new philosophy, new vision, there's a lot of kind of, a lot of change. So I had employees or peers that were kind of going another direction, or however things were happening. And I had a colleague of mine, Chris Canetti, who is now the president of the local organizing committee at Houston for the World Cup. Head to Houston, Texas to take on, he was the COO of the Dynamo. And I was a Jersey guy, and it was funny. I was looking one day at a game, and there was the goal mouth was not in the best of shape. And I texted him. I was like, the goal mouth is awful. And he goes, yeah, I know. You want a job? So never in a million years that a Jersey guy would end up in Texas. But here we go. A few months later, I ended up in Texas. And the vision was to spend a couple of years with the club and just go on sort of an adventure. And I ended up there for well over a decade. So
speaking of Houston, to kind of double click into that, because I think this is probably the experience, at least right now, that most resonates with your current obligations as not just the general manager of the future Tidewater facility, but being also the general manager of the Byrne Stadium experience. When Houston first landed the Dynamo, there was a moment in time where there weren't facilities built yet. Like they were still in their transition. Were you a part of that campaign that had to first facilitate soccer programming outside of the then non-existent stadium that would be built at a later date?
Yeah. I mean, when I signed up, or when I headed down to Houston, essentially it was at the old Robertson Stadium at University of Houston. It's no longer there. They have a beautiful new building now, but the building was, built in 1930 or 1940, and it was primarily built just for, obviously, the capital of sport in Texas, football, right? So we had to, bring everything in to create a pro level soccer experience, and it was, it's challenging, but there's oddly similarities to what I'm experiencing now. Obviously, at Bryant University, we have to bring everything in. It's a little bit different because, the stadium is used for their soccer events as well. But there's obviously, and I'll get into it a little bit later, a pretty big lift when it comes to putting on a pro level experience from a collegiate side. So yeah, it was challenging in Houston. I mean, the team practiced out of that stadium as well. They practiced at a training field across the parking lot. So the whole team would get ready in this really small locker room, walk through all the students' cars across the parking lot, play on or train on a field that was surrounded by a track where students were still doing what they were doing. They would just walk through the field when we were training. So it was was a tough atmosphere. But I'd have to say I have to give credit to Dominic Kinnear and John Spencer and Tim Hanley, who somehow were able to navigate their team through the challenges and win 2 championships back to back, which is pretty incredible. And then I have to, credit the Houston fans for coming out and supporting that team. I think the supporter group at the time, the 2 of them, El Batallon, which was primarily kind of Mexican-American group, as well as Texian Army, were some of the bigger supporters and set the tone, I think, for Major League Soccer. It's incredible what's come now. So no, yes, there's definitely the similarities here that I feel like I'm having a bit of deja vu, if you will.
Speaking of championships, you won 2 with the Dynamo, and I did some research. We have Michael Parkhurst, who is a winner with Atlanta, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that makes you the most winningest RIFC employee within this group, right? You've got the 2.
I think so. I didn't
Does
realize
Parky
that.
know that? Have you guys talked about that?
It was fun during the interview process for this role.
Did you wear them into the interview?
No, I don't normally wear them too much. I mean, when we were during the MLS days, when we would be in the championship, which the Dynamo were in a few times with the Galaxy, we would wear them to the Cup, which was kind of neat. But I don't know, they're always kind of a sort of honestly tucked away in my sock drawer, and I take them out every once in a while when I feel like like opportunities like this, or that people genuinely are interested in the history. But yeah, it's the dynamic with Michael Parkhurst and Kano was fun. It was fun banter, right? Because essentially both of those guys were involved in one year or another in 06 and 07 when we beat New England. Then I won't go too crazy because I know what I'm on here. So, but it was, being a part of, like I said earlier, being as close as in my role, as close as I am to the team, and the team sort of, inner workings was exciting, right? Because I was living it, breathing it. I was in DC for the game. I was literally standing behind the bench with our team administrator the whole game. Ran onto the field when we won. That type of experience is something I'll never ever forget as long as I live. DC, I got champagne showered by Stuart Holden and a few of the players. It's just that type of feeling when you win a championship, and then being ingrained in the team is something I'll never forget. So I hope to have that here. It seems that Kano has built an incredible team, incredible roster. I listen to your podcast all the time as you break things down. It's exciting, right? So I hope to see that this year, and maybe get add another ring here.
I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah.
And then really quickly into the Washington space. Obviously, it's a separate type of football, but something that I wanted to ask you, because I think it's important to at least plant the flag for the later conversations we'll get to have about Tidewater, is you scaled massively to go to FedEx Field at that point, right? Soccer-specific stadiums typically don't exceed 30,000. Suddenly you're in like the stratosphere of a 70,000, 80,000 person venue. But what I really want to touch on is not so much the sporting aspect, but the off-pitch events, the other experiences that venues like that support. So concerts, like the ICC has been put there before, when we have clubs like Manchester United come across the pond. From that perspective, is that also part of your span of control as we think about the future Tidewater element, is those additional concert supporting and, let's call it non-sporting events at the stadium?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we have a massive opportunity with Tidewater to be creative, to be able to, set the tone as far as, bringing in not just soccer, but, overall programming. Being bullish is kind of a word that I use often. So, the goal is to have concerts there. The goal is to maximize a stadium to its fullest capacity, right? So, thinking about being creative in the wintertime, the goal is to keep it open all year round, right? So normally with open air stadiums, especially in this market, will close right after the season's over, usually from like October until February. Will be sort of a dark day. Maybe you do interior events, but I want to take advantage of the cold here in Rhode Island, where maybe we have winter events on there. Maybe we have an ice skating rink. Who knows? So I've kind of posed that idea to a few folks around here, and they're excited about it. So festivals during the summertime, engaging in the community, right? Pawtucket already has a arts festival here. How can we make this bigger, right? How can we make this an even incredible destination, maybe where it's sort of the anchor to that festival, and bringing in other things, other sort of festivals. Maybe I'm dabbling, maybe a barbecue festival, things like that. So obviously, working with our local schools and our colleges. I already kind of met with some of the interscholastic folks. So I am going to push this as hard as I possibly can, and make this as I said, the destination. My experience in Washington has set me up to do that, just like you said. So I was able to, when I was at Washington or with the NFL, folks in my career, my sort of line of work, is sort of the pinnacle of sport, right? To be running an NFL stadium is, you kind of feel like you've quote unquote made it. I enjoyed my time there. I learned an incredible amount of things. I have to credit my boss there, Chris Bloyer, and a few other folks that I work with. It was another challenging role that I've taken on and made a difference. And it was fun. I did Taylor Swift, we did U2, we did Coldplay, did Rolling Stones, I did Jay-Z, Beyonce, really big things that were, that were exciting.
So what we can expect is Taylor Swift to Tidewater, a Rhode Island reunion.
Hey, I'm going to try. She's got a house down the road, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
I mean, it's not that far of a drive, right? So I think it's a little over 20 minutes.
You got to pack a lunch.
I'm sure we could do it. But who knows? I mean, it's the beauty of, and that's a big reason I took, the role with the general manager role, was to be able to, think, have this vision where we could do really big things, right? So, but yeah, it's Washington was fun, learned a lot. Who knows? Maybe one day I could go back to the NFL. I mean, I'll always have that as long as I am in my career, right? That I've spent some 5 years. Feels like 50, but 5 years with Washington.
So speaking of this current role that you have as the general manager, can you walk listeners through how you landed this role? I mean, you were the first employee, so I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the staff at both technical and front office, but I mean, that must have been a truly out of this world experience to know that you were basically being hired into something that nothing else existed yet. Can you walk listeners through what that process looked like?
Sure. So, to me, I always say this to folks when I talk to them, especially younger kids, that networking is the bread and butter of sort of furthering your career advancement. So, I've been fortunate to get to know a lot of folks through my career. And one of them in particular, like I mentioned earlier, is Chris Canetti. And Chris was involved in this project earlier on. He's a native from Connecticut, and he had met with the Fortuitous folks and was, talking to them about, they were trying to figure out what their org chart was going to look like. And it just so happened I was in Houston and we had lunch and we started talking about this amazing project. So that's kind of where this started. And then I went through kind of the interview process with Brett Johnson and the group, and it just felt like this was the right thing at the time. So, Washington obviously went through a ton of change, and for me, it was time. I just knew it was time to move on. So this opportunity came up, the universe and sort of stars aligned, and I had the chance to, anytime I always said to myself, I've always wanted to be the GM of a stadium. That was my ultimate goal, right? So I've always been sort of the guy behind the guy, or the guy behind the gal, or whatnot. I've always kind of been the number two. I've never been that first person. And to be able to open a venue is something that folks don't necessarily get to do in our line of work as well. They may go into a situation, so there's not many that really get to open something and make it as their own. So all the boxes for me, for the most part, were checked. Also wanted to stay on the East Coast. I'm originally from New Jersey. So being able to be a drive away from family was important. And also I have my wife, a daughter. It was important to make sure I had a good quality of life. So all the boxes checked. It was a little bit of a roller coaster ride here over the last 2 years that I've been here, but nothing that I always had confidence in our ownership group, and vision to get the stadium online and to get things going. I've been it's been very easy to work with, and I felt that I was always, this was always going to happen. So, so overall, it's been exciting, but it's been a little bit of a change, right? Because now I've been kind of handling all the operations for Byrne Stadium.
So speaking of your role, I think if you look, depending on where you do the research, a general manager can mean a lot of different things depending on the sport, depending on the club, depending on the stadium and infrastructure itself. How would you define your role and responsibility as a general manager for Rhode Island FC?
Well, I mean, right now it's not necessarily Rhode Island FC. I mean, so I'm essentially the operations person that's facilitating Rhode Island FC at Bryant University. My role as general manager is general manager of the stadium at Tidewater. Defining that role essentially is the fan experience from soup to nuts, right? So and I'm sure we'll get into talking a lot about this later on this year, but a big topic will be parking and traffic. Like, how am I going to get to the stadium? Where am I going to park? What is you're going to be in a very, downtown area. How is that all going to work, right? So I always look at it from a fan journey approach. So my responsibility is working with all of those jurisdictions, parking plans. We're in the middle of it right now. We have tons of engineers, so on and so forth. Then it's getting onto the property. What does the actual stadium look like itself? How are we showcasing, this to our fans? What is our first impression, right? So, and then I'm responsible for all of our security and safety, all of our, our processes, our food and beverage. We partner with Levy Restaurants, who I'm very familiar with through my career, one of the best in the nation, I think world as well. I'm responsible for, like we talked about before, all of the programming. I'm responsible for all the guest services, the field itself, the engineering, everything you can even imagine that goes into that building is under my purview. So the goal is to hire the best staff to be able to showcase ourselves, to put a different spin on maybe the experience that Rhode Islanders have right now when it comes to pro level. I can't necessarily say that I can really compare ourselves to our sort of big brother up the road of Gillette Stadium, but we'll be very different. We're unique. There's nothing like our stadium anywhere in this area. You may have college stadiums, but nothing that'll showcase the latest in technology. They'll be have fans as close as they're going to be down to the field. The location right on the river that we're going to be taking advantage of in more ways than one. So a long way of saying, I mean, a little bit of everything, I think, is the way that I would define my role when it comes to general manager.
So then let's move into, for the rest of the conversation, Bryant for the day, right? Because that's what's the immediate, that's the hot topic. And when I had the privilege of watching the season ticket member event and looking at how that experience was transformed last Friday, I was blown away. And I think a lot of fans and I think a lot of people that saw pictures of the event really started to see what the vision was that was taking shape. But could you explain what have been the major unique challenges that you've faced trying to get this experience ready for Rhode Island FC fans?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think one of the hardest ones is just going into someone else's home, right? So I mean, Bryant University is, they've made a lot of changes over the years, good things. They've built some new fields for their students. They have been, from my understanding, one of the leading colleges in the area, and they've gone every day. They kind of go through the same processes that they do, and then all of a sudden they have a pro team that's literally inside their facilities. So I think just working hand in hand as far as expectations go, expectations from both sides, right? So managing expectations from our head coach and our technical staff as far as how they're preparing the team, where their facilities are for trainings, how the field is set up. They'll be on a grass field that they'll train on, how the field is set up for games, but also balancing what is already occurring, right? So there's, I think, 30-something events or 30-something sports within the college. Their lacrosse team uses the stadium, their soccer team, their football team. So it's balancing the sensitivity, as I say, for Bryant, what they currently have going on with us sort of inserted into the mix and how we can continue to be pro, I think is one of the biggest challenges. But, I can say it's been well received from the Bryant folks. We've been able to sit down and lots of planning, lots of hours together. But I think, we're able to, what you saw a little taste of on Friday, we'll be able to, capitalize on for the 16th and moving forward. So there'll still be challenges as we continue to kind of learn learn ourselves or learn how to navigate around each other, I think is probably the best way to put it. But, I'm used to this. This is what someone we were talking about earlier, what I experienced at University of Houston. They had, football was paramount. It was nothing but football. And then the Dynamo were successful and they were winning games and winning championships. And we had to sort of balance field time and football lines. And, we'll still have to do that here. We're balancing lacrosse lines, and it's a field turf field. It's a turf field compared to a grass field. So football season's going to be fun, So I can say right now, but my job is to, make this as soccer specific as possible, right? And to make it a Rhode Island fan experience specific as possible. So you'll see some things that maybe you did on Friday where, we've added a lot to the experience, meaning, currently Paul Byrne Stadium isn't necessarily set up for a security checkpoint, if you will, like a gate checkpoint. So we've brought in a lot of that infrastructure to create a perimeter, create a security presence to manage kind of our bag checking, bag policies, our ticket takers, so on and so forth. So it's been a little bit of a lift.
Speaking of those experiences, can you tease to listeners a little bit about what they can expect from a pregame and an in-game amenities perspective? There was the kind of food truck court I saw at the season ticket member event. What does that look like in an in-game? And then also, we're going to probably have to spend a little bit of time today talking about tailgate and parking, but can we start with the stadium itself?
Sure. So as I was mentioning before, we've created gates. There's, two main gates that are clearly marked when you approach the stadium, Gate B and Gate C. Those gates, you'll be entering into a queuing essentially, where you'll be met with our security employees that'll be instituting similar to your experience at Gillette Stadium, some policies and procedures when it comes to the bag policy. It's a clear bag policy at our venue as well. And you'll go through magnetometers, or actually the latest technology of magnetometers that will hopefully reduce the waiting time when you come into our events. Our goal is to, on a first impression, is to make that process as seamless as possible for fans and get them into the venue as soon as we can. I do want to say for the 16th, I would recommend that folks get to the stadium as early as possible. We're anticipating we'll have, and we'll get into parking here in a second, but our parking will be open 3 hours prior to kickoff. Kickoff is at 4:00. It'll be open at 1:00. We're going to open gates a little bit earlier as well. Normally we open them an hour early, but we're going to open them an hour and a half early. So we'd like you to come in and utilize the food trucks like you just mentioned. Bryant University has a limited concession availability. So we were forced to bring in food trucks to be able to manage that load. We had a great experience, like you mentioned, at the event on Friday. We had 3 food trucks. We should have about 6 for this game, as well as what was glaringly missing was alcohol. We did not have alcohol on the 8th, but we will have beer sales as well. We have portable beer portables around the stadium, about 6 of them in different strategic locations. We're selling beer in the concession stands as well.
Beer and wine only, or spirits as well?
No, there'll be beer, wine, a canned cocktail. It's been, back to the challenges piece, it's been a bit challenging when you have to bring in everything. In a stadium, having Tidewater is you have the refrigeration to be able to put cases of beer. You have the storage to be able to have these things. Everything here is very much bring in, take out, bring in, take out. So we've had to really be strategic on how we were putting all this planning together. So, but I think to the common fan or to anyone listening, I think, you won't see all the background there as far as what we had to do to put into it. You'll see the kiosk in front of you that you have plenty of beers to be able to buy and enjoy yourself for the game.
Speaking of alcohol, just so we can move away from it, I'm still required every time I interview a member of the staff, if there's any exploration of those dollar beer nights when we have the midweek games where, it's something that draws people in. Is that something being considered by the club at this time?
Yeah, I mean, I could say it's probably being considered. I think we need to understand what our local laws are when it comes to that. So it depends on the liquor license as well, if we're able to do something like that. So yes, being explored, but we'll see how if it comes to fruition.
Let's jump into the parking, right? This has probably been something as far back as when season ticket member sales first went online. There's been some questions, some curiosity from fans about exactly how the parking will work. It doesn't take a math genius to know that for the amount of seats that we've sold, there's not that many immediate parking spots available adjacent to the field. How will parking work for fans, and can you describe what that experience is expected to look like?
Sure. So we'll go back to the challenges again. So, one of the bigger challenges for us is the timing where our season sits as it relates to the school schedule, right? So, school obviously is in session right now. They have spring break this weekend, so it works out pretty well for us just for our inaugural match. But moving forward, we have to sort of balance how many parking is actually available in the inventory versus the reality of how many parking spots there are, right? So we have a certain amount of inventory that the university is, amenable to, that they feel that they are comfortable with us using. So we went out and had some prepaid parking sales, primarily to our season ticket holders. So that has been exhausted. That's now sold out for this game. So there is parking in the immediate location of the stadium called Bryant University Stadium lot. That parking will be on a first come, first served basis.
Even if you have the season ticket member pass?
Exactly. So if you have a season ticket holder pass, you will receive parking in that lot, even if it fills up. So make sure you have those passes available. Make sure those passes are saved to your phone before you arrive. One of the other big challenges is the Wi-Fi and cellular capability will be unreliable. So it's our understanding if there's patrons over 3,000 folks there, it will become very difficult to use. So I can't stress enough to our fans to use their Google Pay or their Apple Wallet to save their tickets and their parking in their wallets before they arrive.
So that's the season ticket members that have season ticket parking passes. They're guaranteed a spot in that what we'll call, I guess, front lot. What happens for, I guess, what are you calling that, the overflow for fans? What happens there?
Yeah. So so prepaid pass is sold out for this match. There are spots available. And then let me sort of step back for a second. So that lot that I'm speaking about, the Bryant University lot, is still open for people to pay for parking, right? So it's for pass holders, but also open for people to purchase as well.
And that's the first come, first serve?
First come, first serve. So there'll be parking attendants available. We partnered with a company called Laz Parking, who's managing everything for us for flow. And they'll actually, when you arrive, they'll direct you into a parking spot. So if you're looking to come with a group, or if you're looking to come with some folks, we want you to tailgate, I would advise that you come together so you can be in the same location. It'll be very difficult to move from one location of the lot to the other because the parking staff will be putting you directly into a parking spot. But I do emphasize tailgating is open. Once lots open, tailgate it. You can tailgate anywhere within the Bryant University Stadium lot. And parking is available. It's $20 regardless if you're at the stadium lot or the overflow lot. And we are only credit and debit only. There's no cash parking. We are a cashless venue across the board,
including inside the stadium,
including
for
inside
merch and concessions.
Yep. Well, everything is
even the food trucks.
Yes. So once the stadium lot is full, we've reached our capacity, then all fans will be directed to the overflow lot, which is directly across the street from Bryant University. The overflow lot is at 100 Salem Street. It's on the Fidelity campus. Fans will be directed into this parking garage, and they must use a shuttle that we're providing for fans. Fans cannot walk from the garage to the stadium. must use the shuttle. There'll be 4 shuttles available. They'll be running constantly for folks to be able to take them from the garage to the stadium. And then after the stadium, there will be a shuttle stop clearly marked where you'll be dropped off to be brought to bring fans back to the overflow lot.
And I'm assuming no tailgating experience or any kind of celebratory actions at the Fidelity lot?
Absolutely nothing at the overflow lot. Only tailgating at the stadium lot.
But fans can bring items for tailgating on the shuttle over, have an experience there, and then they'd either need to take that back or have consumed whatever those celebratory things are before.
Yes, 100%. Yep, definitely.
And what's the capacity for the parking lot? So there's like a magic number that fans can kind of understand. I think you said that the season ticket member passes are sold out, but what's that like reserve number before we get to overflow?
It's an ever evolving number,
Okay.
right? So it's hard for me to be able to give you an absolute. I can tell you that we've maxed it out. So at this time, it's easier for us to control the fans that are coming in. I can tell you that we should be able to park most of our fans in the stadium lot. I can tell you that. But as we get closer and closer to kickoff, it's more likely that fans that lot will become full capacity and fans will be pushed to the overflow lot.
So there is a major incentive at this point, whether it's the tailgating experience or just that primary parking, to arrive as early as possible.
100%.
And take advantage of all of the amenities that are going on.
Yeah. Tailgate early. It looks like the weather is going to cooperate with us. I've been watching it
every minute,
every second.
Yeah.
So please take advantage. We want you to enjoy your tailgating.
And then speaking of some of the other facilities for tailgating experience or just parking in general, how's the restroom situation? When I was at the Bryant experience, I saw a few portable facilities, and then I saw the ones directly under the bleachers. What does that look like for listeners?
Good question. So we are deploying up to 50 portalets in this small space as well, and that doesn't even account for the portalets that are in the parking lot. So there'll be sufficient portalets in the parking lot for folks. There'll be some hot coal bins there as well and garbage bins for people to be able to utilize. And then once you enter the venue, we'll make sure that we have sufficient signage. That's another thing that was not up on the 8th. So none of our branding or anything, no wayfinding signage. So we'll ensure that there's wayfinding to restrooms, to the portalet locations throughout the venue so that folks can find it easier. The other big change or add to the experience is staff. So we've partnered with a company called Best Security and Guest Services. They're used in NFL venues and places all over this country. So they're managing all of our security and guest services. So we'll have up to 100 staff within the footprint that'll be able to help any fans with guidance to restrooms, to the food trucks, we have a beer garden, to locations throughout the venue. So please, I implore the fans to please use our staff. They're there to be able to help you get to your seats and so on.
And then last question of the tailgating before we move back into the stadium. Are there any rules that you would maybe want to highlight as something that transcends the normal FAQ of a tailgating requirement for a sporting event? Is there anything that you want to distinguish so that people know how to tailgate responsibly in that space? Maybe it's time to start or time after, anything that would maybe differentiate from a normal other sport experience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, tailgating opens when the lot's open, so it'll be 3 hours prior to kickoff. I would ask fans to try to condense their tailgate to their spot, to their location, to try to keep the driving lanes open for folks, emergency vehicles, to be able to get through if they needed to. We do have EMS on site as well, so if there's anyone that's hurt or needs attention, we can certainly facilitate. I would just say, all of our Know Before You Goes are going to go live, most likely either tonight or tomorrow morning on our website. So please go to that page. There are specific tailgating policies on there for you, as well as all of our parking information that I spoke about today.
I'll actually add in for listeners, just be responsible. And that's not just in how you celebrate this team, but also clean up after yourselves. There's a lot of hardworking people, like Paul said. So please make sure you clean up after yourselves and work with each other to make sure these are the best kinds of events possible. For parking, we seem to have a good pulse on that. But for people who don't have a car and will be using public transportation or ride sharing. Can you describe that experience for fan engagement? One of the questions we're hoping to understand today is, especially with the way buses will work getting there, is there any kind of dedication for like an express bus out of maybe downtown or somewhere else? How is that partnership? What does that look like as an experience?
A good question. So I'll touch on rideshare first, and I'll talk about bus transportation. So rideshare, we are working with, I think, Uber and Lyft to create a geofence around the property that would force rideshare drivers to utilize the overflow lot for their drop-off and pickup. So the challenge with rideshare is from my experience, if rideshare drivers get involved in our current fans trying to park, it tends to be a little bit of a challenge because they'll just, as any rideshare driver, wants to please their client that's riding with them and get them as close as they possibly can. So we're working with the different companies to have them at a central location, and that becomes hopefully that becomes the norm. So reality is probably not, but we're going to do everything we can to be able to facilitate and get those folks to and from that location.
And that would be the same when they're trying to leave for the night.
Yep, should take the shuttle from the stadium to the lot. It'll be I think on drop off, there may be a few rideshare drivers that get in, no problem. We have a plan for that. On pickup, I can say that, when 5,000 fans are trying to leave at the same time, it'll be very difficult for anyone to try to access their clients. So public transportation. So we've been in touch with RIPTA. RIPTA does have a bus route, number 50, that travels from Providence to Bryant University. So they have a current stop on campus right near actually where our shuttle bus drop off and pickup is. So I would ask fans to check out ripta.com to follow those schedules. I was paying attention during I think it was Friday when I was there, of the frequencies of the buses coming in and out, and I noticed that the bus was coming in around for a 7:30 game, but it was very active. So the schedule will be on there, and I'm pretty certain the ride from Providence to Bryant, given traffic, is about 20 minutes. So it's not a bad route, pretty direct, and could be a good opportunity for folks to take that bus. You avoid your parking fee and so on. So we welcome it.
But the bus will bring you to the very front of the experience,
so
you won't have to take the shuttle piece.
Exactly. It'll bring you right to the front of the university where its normal bus stop is.
So moving back into the in-game experience, one of the things that I saw that was incredible was you guys finally had the LED boards up around the field. Is there you talked about kind of the Wayfinder experience with signage. Is there anything left from a marketing perspective that we'll see, especially for the season ticket members that have already seen it now? Is there anything left transformationally that will be kind of stood up before the New Mexico United game?
There was a few things there that were in place that we didn't activate. So I'm not sure if you saw, there's a trailer, we call it the Party Shack, on one corner of the field. That's for like a group setting that'll be activated from a fan experience standpoint. We have, as you said, the LED boards that are there that are incredible. They were pretty bright, so we'll tone down the color a little bit for the 16th, but we hope to maximize those boards as well as the main video board to its capacity as far as what we can do. I think Bryant uses it, but I don't necessarily think that they have gone into the level of detail that we have of showing different sort of fan experiences when it comes to like the smile cam and the fan meter and those types of things that you may see at PC games and so on. We're really trying to engage the fans. Obviously, a lot of soccer engagement is very organic, which we would love to see, but also want to be able to to showcase that fan experience there. We'll have a couple different elements for the first game that we won't have for the season. We're working on a flyover and some firework elements that'll be really exciting. And some guests as well, as we're going through telling our story on our presentation. So, our goal is to be, as I've mentioned before, be pro level here. So I hope that the fans feel that when we're presenting sort of these pregame ceremonies to them with the team and trying to introduce the team, to the fans. It'll be a very special moment. So I'm a sucker when it comes to national anthems. So we'll have a guest national anthem singer, and those are the times for me when I'm actually able to stop and take it all in when that national anthem is played, sort of the pinnacle of the event. So
in terms of security, fans can have access to just about anywhere else in the stadium, right? It's, obviously they have their seat ticket, but there's no areas that are cut off or places that you expect to make sure fans are not accessing. I think maybe the one exception is the south side. That looks like that might be the VIP experience, but other than that, they can navigate the entire, we'll call it a horseshoe.
Yeah, fans can access 360. It's just a little bit of a detour, if you will, on the south end, as you mentioned. So there is a strength conditioning building, which is on that south end, but there is an outside walkway that fans can navigate around to be able to go for the full 360. It kind of feels like they're walking outside the stadium, but there is an access point there. So our guest services folks will be able to help direct fans to kind of get around the building. We did install a temporary bleacher system in there with 2,000 additional seats. There is a walkway path underneath that system, so that'll provide you access around. Another difference between the 8th and now is that there seemed to be a good amount of traffic that was walking directly behind our team benches. That'll be managed a bit better this game, so there'll be some areas that'll be closed off to fan sort of traffic, especially when the teams are on the field, as well as when the teams enter the field in and out, their locker rooms are kind of in the middle of where our fans are, accessing their seats. So there may be a period of time when the team is, coming on and off the field that will shut down areas for a few minutes just to facilitate the team walkout and when we're traveling to and from. So, but it shouldn't impact the fans. We'll make sure our security and guest services are communicating accordingly.
And then, one of my favorite things to always see at a soccer stadium, specific or not, is unique goal experiences, unique things that make the stadium almost become a 12th man, if you will. Is there anything that you can share about supporter-driven elements, even like PA or in-stadium experiences, or is there anything unique that we're thinking about for celebrating when goals are scored or when victories occur for Rhode Island FC for the fans?
So we've been meeting very closely with Defiance 1636 supporter group. Irvin and his team have been incredible to work with, and we actually just recently had a meeting with our head coach and the supporter group to facilitate what these experiences would look like, which I've honestly never seen before. So it was kind of neat to be a part of that. So I can't really divulge on a lot of things, honestly, Matt. I think we need to let it play out as it may. We do have a goal song that'll be played, but I can't necessarily get into it until it is played. I hate to kind of leave you on a limb here, but you'll see, you'll experience it and hopefully be engaging on the 16th when it happens. Hopefully 3 times.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover today, Paul? Anything that you think fans should know, whether it's outside the stadium, inside the stadium, anything that you would want to tease listeners with?
Well, listen, I think there's a couple main points I'd like to leave fans with, especially when it comes to the 16th, right? So please arrive early. That is number one. So, please utilize our website for all the information that we'll have going live here in the next 24 hours. If there's any questions that you don't understand on the website, use our phone, or you can probably find my email address somewhere. I will respond to you. So the goal is to try to get that as much information in the fans' hands to give them the ability to make their decisions on their journey or their best decisions possible. Please know that we are a cashless venue, right? So we will only accept, obviously, credit and debit cards, no cash at all. Also, as I've mentioned a few times on the podcast, the Wi-Fi and the cellular is unreliable. So for your tickets, they are on SeatGeek. Navigate that SeatGeek app now. If you have any challenges with trying to receive your tickets, or please call your rep, or just call our office. We can help you. We have plenty of staff here available to manage and be at your service, so to speak. But I'm looking forward to showcasing the hard work that's been put into getting our inaugural game off the ground. I'm excited to showcase Bryant University and Byrne Stadium and have this incredible event, and obviously for the state of Rhode Island as well. So exciting times ahead, and look forward to getting on this podcast, I don't know, 6 months from now, and talk about our beautiful new building right across the street here. So thanks for the time.
Paul, thanks for joining us on Raising Anchor. Wishing you and your hardworking staff the most successful season possible. So thanks again. You can find us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast, Instagram at Raising Anchor, and of course we've got that website, www.raisinganchorpodcast.com. Don't check our website this week. Make sure you go and read those FAQs and how-tos for the inaugural match this Saturday, March 16th, the game being at 4 p.m. against Connection United. But as Paul said, you're encouraged to show up. Gates open to the facilities at 1 o'clock, and then the tickets to the stadium open at 2:30. So we look forward to seeing everyone there, and Anchor's up. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, man.